A number of years ago, the internet here at the college slowed to a crawl. Tons of calls poured into the help desk. "The internet is down," people shouted, raising their pitchforks in protest and pounding on the door. Locating the problem was not hard. A student tucked away in a dormitory near College Creek, downloading an inordinate amount of data. So I cut his network access. The source of the data? None other than the Library of Congress. "My internet went down," a student said, walking through my door with an annoyed look. I informed him he had impacted business operations and asked him what he had been downloading from the Library of Congress. He replied, not what, the Library of Congress. He had been downloading everything they had made available online, which was a lot. Here at the college, books are important, so I'm going to use them as a form of measurement. Roughly speaking, all of the books in the Library of Congress could be housed in about 10 terabytes of data. Does anybody remember card catalogs? Anyway, the 500 or so students on campus today download 10 terabytes of data every week. While I would love to brag they're reading that many books, most of it is actually video and images. Human beings have always created and consumed data. Archaeologists specialize in finding the data left behind and piecing it together. Historians scour records, writings, and accounts to do the same. Over time, what has changed is the capacity for human beings to store data. From the development of language, oral tradition, to writing, painting, printing, photography, audio, video, and now the transition of the world from analog to digital. A good bit of this is quickly summarized in this picture I took of Machu Picchu, showing the juxtaposition of data found in the format of stacked stones and the penultimate personal expression of data creation, the selfie. The value of data has always depended on a number of variables throughout history. However, in the beginning of the 21st century, there was a fundamental shift where technology created the opportunity for the value of any data to exceed the cost of storing it. Coupled with innovations in the creation and management of data, we reached a tipping point. All data now has value. Much in the same way all gold or silver has value, all data has value. Type of data is largely irrelevant. It can be something as simple as keywords in your email, browsing habits in history, something as benign as a family photograph, or as obvious as intellectual property. What is interesting is that the value of the individual piece of data matters not, because storage is so cheap that that value outweighs the cost of storing it. This was the beginning of the great data rush. Organizations that understood all data has value capitalized on the opportunity. A cycle began, a cycle that continues until this day, a data cycle. Data is extracted and stored. From that data, revenue is now generated in one of many ways. That revenue is used to fund innovations in technologies that either create more data, siphon more revenue from data, or both. The flood of data wealth built the foundation for data-based services in the connected world. The allure of free email and social media, granted by those prospering most from the great data rush, evolved into a symbiotic relationship where the individual and later even the corporation was forced to move away from hosting their own data and services simply due to cost. The data was pulled from the small piles where it was only valuable to the individual or the organization and into the cloud where data could be extracted. Believe it or not, Nintendo actually figured this out back in the 1980s, but it was just a game to them. Get used to the dad jokes, more are coming. Companies that collect and store data are unregulated banks. By storing data, a bank or a organization can actually generate income. Using your data along with the data of others on their platform, income can be generated. And this goes far beyond interest or advertising to selling a part of you that you may not even be aware exists. And the return is far beyond that of banks because of the exponential rise of data. We have entered the zettabyte era. In 2012, the amount of data existing in the world surpassed a zettabyte. Now, more than that amount of traffic traverses the world every year. And it is estimated there could be 40 zettabytes of data in existence today. If that much data was stored in books, it would take 4 billion libraries of Congress to hold them all. But where is the data coming from? Well, the individual is no longer just the creator, but also the consumer of data. Every one of us today creates more data than we likely know or even imagine. I am not even a fan of social media, and I still take tons of pictures of my adorable son. Here he is waking me up. Here he is going for a walk, playing on the playground. And in case you do not believe me when I say how adorable he is, here's a picture of him from the side. Think of how many pictures I take just to be able to choose ones that do not show his face or give away his location. But it's not just this. It's not the deliberate content creation. Let's take a look at my data. This is me. Exciting, right? Taking a closer look, I have both public and private data. I'd like to think it's more like this, but let's keep things realistic. And if I'm being honest with myself, there's a part of me that I don't even know. But there's more to it, because there's a part of me that I think is private and is not. Don't look for me on the internet. If I didn't want to see what was out there, you really don't. I even thought about putting something I found in the presentation here, but apparently TED has rules. Here's the kicker, though. Part of that unknown data, that blind spot, that part of us that we don't even know, has been learned, but not by us. How was it learned? Going back to those images of my son, if you had the data itself, you could extract the exact latitude and longitude of where the picture was taken. Given all the pictures that we take, not to mention everyone around us taking pictures, imagine the story that can be written, knowing the exact location, date, time, and every individual in every one of those images. This is the data we cannot see. Embedded in every new technology, in every gadget upgraded, is the capacity to pull more data out of you. Taking things a step further, applications not only use these technologies to siphon data from you, they feed off of your input. This is the data we cannot see. Social media is so powerful because you interact entirely within their sphere of influence. Social media tracks everything you do, from what you post, to what you view, to whether you like or dislike something, to how quickly you scroll past or even interact with content. A profile is built to keep you engaged, to ensure not only that you return to the platform, but that you stay engaged for longer periods of time. Research is now emerging, showing how information can affect the brain in the same manner as money and other rewards. And the longer you stay on these platforms, the more about you they learn, and the easier it is for you to be targeted. Given the sheer amount of data available and the tools to store, sort, and manipulate it, information can be tailored like a designer drug and targeted like a smart bomb, delivered to individuals as the most effective form of advertising ever deployed. Information is here to stay, it is here to manipulate, and we have given it so much data about ourselves without even thinking of the consequences that it is startlingly effective. We need to engage, with the ethics of the use of information as an addictive substance, and how data unseen can be used to manipulate. Earlier, I mentioned a student downloading the Library of Congress. I laughed, some others thought it was funny, but nobody batted an eye when I mentioned how quickly I was able to target and locate that student, or determine what he was downloading and from where. Why don't we ask these questions? DNA tests are widely available and relatively cheap. You can obtain your own biological information for under $100. But at what cost? These organizations both house and use your data to generate revenue. What is the cost of a DNA test where your data is kept private? Hundreds of dollars more, at least. So at a minimum, your genetic information is worth that and more as time goes on. Can you imagine what will be buried under mounds of data for future historians and data archaeologists to uncover? Not only will our biological information be accessible, and that of our families, but everywhere we went and every thought we expressed, whether it was a facial expression caught on a camera, a post we made on social media, a text message we sent, or even an emoticon, is collected. What about your heartbeat? In all of human history, I can recall one heartbeat rate during one event. Can anyone guess it was in 1969? Neil Armstrong taking manual control and landing on the moon. 150 beats per minute, which is about what I'm at right now up here. All of it can and will be collected, analyzed, and used to build a profile, perhaps even write a narrative, built in conjunction with the data you cannot see, and with such aggregation and learning. That narrative will only become more accurate and frighteningly useful in both the right and wrong ways. Will Robert Frost's famous poem about two roads diverging still relate to those in the future? Or will they always be able to look back and see every step they took? What path do we choose now? Well, as individuals, we can be more cognizant of the data that we create and share, and understand how information can be used against us. Quite simply put, the more data you allow out, the more vulnerable you are. But getting that message out to people is not easy. And getting them to accept it at the expense of convenience is even harder. We need to reframe the conversation on data. Introduce new vocabulary, such as data exploitation. Given our previous analogy to banks, we could consider data laundering, or even go as far as suggesting data trafficking. What is important is that data has value. It can be exceptionally personal and private, to the point where it is very much a part of who we are. And it can be given, taken, traded, and used against us, even in the same way our loved ones can be leveraged. We need to build a firewall within ourselves. We need to weave data, logic, and privacy into the traditional curriculum and reinforce such a tapestry with critical thinking. We need to help children build the capacity to filter the bombardment of information instead of allowing them to become addicted to such enormous amounts of input. It may even be necessary to introduce mindfulness to help them unplug. Such a firewall, I believe, would prove useful for children as they inherit a world that struggles not only with the sheer volume of information, but how that information will be used against them. The amount of data that we create and information that we consume is incredible. Not only have we lost the ability to be private, it is uncertain we even have the ability to handle so much information. We need to build a firewall within ourselves to protect not only ourselves, but the world at large. as a very real part of who we are, both singularly and collectively as a species, steps into a binary immortality. An immortality that can be changed and manipulated, or even turned on and off by a will that does not reside within our own souls. Thank you for your time.